our very first data integration was actually like with a different company, Yodlee, and this is before the days of open banking with like credential sharing and such.
We did the sort of credential sharing approach ourselves early on while the open banking APIs were still getting up to speed, and found the open banking ones are much faster, much more reliable, much lower error rates, much higher conversion rates.
Hey, welcome to Homescreen. I'm Jim Safford and I'm a product lead here at 11FS. Homescreen is brought to you by the 11FS Pulse team. It's a show all about product and design where we talk you through some of the stuff that impactful companies are building and share a little set of nuggets about how they work and how you can work with them as well. Today I'm joined by Sean Conley, who is product manager at TrueLayer, and Matt Spraggs, who is a developer at Plum. And we're going to be talking about AIS and PIS functionality. AIS being account initiation services and PIS being payment initiation services. So an AIS is an authorized provider that that means a business can ask for permission to connect to a bank account and use that bank account information to provide a service. Businesses who are AISPs, so account initiation service providers, are authorized read-only access to bank account information. Basically, they can look, but they can't touch on the data that you provide, and then they can also sort of ask for access on a recurring basis to that data. PIS or PISPs, payment initiation service providers, they can ask for permission to connect to a bank account and initiate payments on the customer's behalf from their own bank account. Now, there's no need to sort of access any data on their perspective, so it's just less of a need to check in with how those with permissions and stuff for this sort of thing. But there's a number of reasons why they'd want a business to be able to initiate a payment on their behalf. For example, an app that helps manage money in various accounts to ensure that a user never goes overdrawn, sort of like Plum that we might see today. Both are mandated activities of open banking. So in the UK, this is the Competition and Markets Authority 9 banks that are regulated must in some way provide AIS and PIS functionality for their products. Without further ado, we'll just welcome Matt and Sean onto the call. Enjoy the episode. So just to kick off, can you both tell me a little bit about where you've come from and how you came to get involved with TrueLayer and Plum? Matt, can we start off with you?
Sure. So I've actually been working at Plum since April last year. But I'm like relatively new to the fintech space. I originally studied physics, and I've had sort of a variety of software engineering roles since then, like some in academia and some in industry.
Oh, really?
My last job was actually completely divorced from fintech. It was working for a company that delivered autonomous boats.
Okay.
But for a long time, I'd kind of been aware that through using banking and stuff, that there must be APIs and stuff like this. Surely there must be like ways in to actually automate this. And so like with the advent of things like challenger banks and stuff, it attracted my interest a lot, and I decided to pivot towards that sector. And like I applied to Plum because it sounded like a really nice mission statement to sort of save money for more people. And sort of here I am. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Amazing. So what kind of development work do you do? Are you full stack or do you specialize in a particular area?
So I was originally hired as a back-end engineer, and I have ended up doing a little bit of like web development for the front end. But more recently, we've pivoted more towards apps. Our original offering was like on Messenger.
Yes.
But like we're moving towards using the apps a lot more. We've got dedicated engineers for that.
Great, cool. Cool, and Sean, same for you?
I'm actually a little new to fintech myself. My first job actually was at a nonprofit called GiveWell, which is an international development research organization, and then made a big change to Google, where I was before this for a couple of years working with apps, helping them grow with Google, which was I think it was really good exposure for what I'm doing now. I got to work with like lots of different types of companies, lots of different types of apps, and like sort of learn all the best practices, I guess, of different app companies. And so wanted somewhere a lot smaller where I could be a lot more hands-on. So joined TrueLayer last January, and I'm a product manager now, but started off on our customer success team, sort of as a way to learn the fintech space and TrueLayer's clients. And that was a great transition, going from working with apps broadly to getting to work with all the fintech companies TrueLayer works with, and learned a lot from the product development of all of our clients, which I think has helped inform me. Now I'm a product manager focused on user experience for end users that connect or make payments with TrueLayer, and so having had all that exposure, I think has been really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I guess if you're customer centric, like from the outset, then that's really helpful for a product person. So could you talk a little bit more specifically about what TrueLayer and Plum do respectively? Sean, you can kick off. What are the marquee sort of products that are available via your service?
So TrueLayer broadly is an open banking platform, which our focus is on getting access to banking data and banking APIs for clients through one single integration. And so we have the platform sort of consists of two main products, I guess. One is the data access. So, with their consent, you can access your users' bank details and transaction data, balance data, all that sort of stuff. And then we have a connected payments API where you can make payments easily. People can initiate payments straight out of their bank accounts. And so the thing we're aiming to be is the sort of one toolkit that you can use to use all these banking products just through us.
Plum's original mission statement was to save more for our users, and we do this via connecting to their bank account using data APIs and determining the optimal amount we can save for them using originally it was the algorithm, but now we have other methods of saving too. And then on top of this, we have other product offerings. So we want to open up investments to our users to make it easier for them to invest more. And then, as well as that, we also provide switching functionality. So as well as looking at how much we can save for you automatically, we also look at transactions to see if there are bills and things that the users may be overspending on, so that we can help suggest whether they can save money on their bills and make that switching flow seamless.
And will you initiate the switch for them then?
Yeah, exactly. So originally it started off with energy, because that's one of the big ones. But then recently we've also started to offer other switching, broadband switching, for example.
We've seen, I guess, now the initial phase of AIS has been sort of generally well received by a lot of the banks. Most of them within the Competition and Markets Authority 9 have initiated those flows. Some haven't, but then now the big focus then is on PIS. So payment initiation functions. What do they kind of mean to you guys, and how do you approach sort of building for that particular legislation, if there is any? Is it helpful for you guys to have that sort of thing available to you? Are you guided by the legislation in any way?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting space, and the legislation obviously sort of allows it, in that the banks have to provide these APIs. Not obvious that they would have done it anyway, but we do want to go beyond it too. We're talking to, there's a lot of things you could do with direct partnerships with the banks to allow more features, but even just the core product, I think, of this, single immediate payments, which is the main focus of the legislation so far, means you can do payments really quickly, which is really valuable, especially when people can approve them just with their banking apps biometrically. They're very, very cheap, which is a big strength of them, and they're very secure. It's built on the Faster Payments Network. It's a very simple process really for the users, and a very very well established payment method. So the security, I think, is very well known. So all of that stuff, I think, is combines to make a very compelling product.
Cool. That's good. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think fortunately, because of the hard, all the work that TrueLayer are putting into this, it means that as users of the faster, this payments API, we don't have to be too concerned with getting the implementation exactly right according to the legislation. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are, accounting for things like AML. But like on top of that, like we are sort of we're letting TrueLayer do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is incredibly valuable from our perspective.
Yeah, I guess I could to add to that. I think that is our goal too. Is there, the stuff PIS? It's all a bit of a hot topic in the fintech space, but we don't want. To us, we're happy if our clients don't know what PIS even stands for. We don't want them to have to deal with the legislation or the compliance stuff. Like we've taken that all a question, and you don't need any special regulation, to access the payment APIs. So I think that's an exciting thing about it, is even people who don't know what PIS is can still use this new payment method very easily.
Yeah, and I guess it goes down to that larger point, which is, and this is not just tech companies themselves, but like the general public, they don't know what open banking is or what any of that stuff is, but they do see the outcome of that. So like the focus of the tech companies should be, how do we best deliver the outcome rather than the output of what the specific legislation is, and convey that information. But that also talks to the companies as well. Like, does a company need to know what PIS is? Probably not. But do they need to know that their customers can easily generate payments from one account through to another? Yes, because that's generally helpful. That's a really interesting model. And I think, the thing you were saying there about specializing and focusing on what you each do very well, for you guys, Matt, you do the actual reading and sequencing of that sort of spending data and being able to, you do that stuff very well. And then Sean, you guys do the actual connection stuff very well. You need to get out of the way and let the other person do what they do very well. I think that's the really compelling part about that. On that, sorry, did you want to say something then, Sean?
Oh, I was just going to add, I think the other interesting thing is seeing, as sort of you said, like a lot of people don't even need to know what open banking is.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our clients, when initiating the payments product, for example, they just say pay by bank.
Yeah.
And some do say pay by open banking, and that might be exciting for some users, but a lot of users is just, I can pay with my Lloyd's account. Great. Yeah. And it's a slightly easier experience than they were expecting, probably, but they don't need to know why it's there. It's just a very functional experience for them.
Absolutely. Cool. So can we touch on, I guess that this is a follow-up question, but it's about like the notion of partnerships. So obviously for you guys, TrueLayer, partnerships are massive. It's the bread and butter. You are a B2B product. How do you kind of go about, and how has the company been set up to facilitate these partnerships? How do the product teams work in terms of linking up with TrueLayer, and on Plum side as well, to follow that sort of, how have you found the experience of working with third parties like TrueLayer? How do you bake them into your workflows, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's hugely important to us. Both because we're a B2B business, but also just because our product development is really largely informed by our clients.
Yeah.
Plum in particular is a great example. They've been a client since the really early days. And so we've gotten a ton of feedback, and a lot of the changes on our platform were made basically like directly from talking to Plum and seeing how they were using it and what the issues they came across were. So that's been great for us. And so we have a client care team that helps, our clients solve like technical issues as soon as they come up. But then we also have a customer success team, which like focuses on building relationships with clients. And we have a close relationship with a lot of our clients, like regular conversations. And then we like to get our product managers and engineers even like directly talking to clients, especially when we're launching new features. We'll have the engineers or product managers talk to the clients directly. But even just in the normal course of business with Slack channels or calls, like just being able to talk to clients directly has been huge for us, and learning how to develop things that people actually want and will use the best way. And I guess the last thing I would add is the end users. We learn best through the end users of our clients. So Plum has tons of users. They're getting feedback from them, and then to the extent that they're passing that on to us is really valuable for us to build things that our clients want and find easy to use, but also that the end users will find the easiest to use.
Cool. Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly from Plum's, like from our perspective, it's been hugely valuable, like having a close relationship with TrueLayer to get very quick feedback on like the two different elements of like of their business that we leverage, like obviously the data API and the payments API. I mean, we've been working with them since for a number of years, and they've been like really valuable. That relationship is really good. And as far as like Plum's wider business model is also concerned, like we're obviously trying to make inroads into an industry that's like in some sense, like some of elements of which are quite like old, I guess. Maybe not quite as like tech friendly as you might like. So we are still like quite heavily reliant on partnerships generally, like not just TrueLayer, but like other partners for things like investments and stuff as well. So like partnerships generally are like a key to us. But obviously we're the end user rather than the provider.
Sure, that's great. So just to kick off the actual analysis side of things, we're going to look at the AIS first, linking Monzo via TrueLayer. So I'm just going to sort of roll through the video now. We've got sort of a list of banks. We've clicked on Monzo, and then going in via a gateway, I would imagine, to what TrueLayer's sort of mobile site, and then back into Monzo there. Then we've got sort of 2 accounts which we can select. Longing for the day when you can do all both at the same time, but I guess there's complications in that. And then back into Monzo there. Oh, sorry, we're back into Plum here, selecting the current account again, and then all done. A nice bit of congratulatory sort of confetti, and we've got our account linked. So that's directly using the data API you were talking about there. And I guess this has been a long form feature of the company, so of Plum so far. It's one of the first things you'll started using, I'd imagine. What was sort of required to facilitate that sort of connection with TrueLayer to begin with? I appreciate that you've not been there for that long, but sort of from a technical perspective, how do you have any anecdotal evidence about how they found the experience of using TrueLayer or anything like that?
Well, I mean, so it kind of all started, like our very first data integration was actually like with a different company, Yodlee, and this is before the days of open banking with like credential sharing and such. And then like we got in touch with TrueLayer and migrated to their API, and I guess like pre-open banking, like there wasn't a guarantee about how long like the credentials that you had would be valid for. So you might have this like, I'm not talking about the client's credentials for their bank. I more mean like the access tokens that TrueLayer would give us. So we potentially like we'd have to ensure that we kept refreshing those regularly enough that we wouldn't have to keep asking the user to re-authenticate themselves. But then obviously like open banking comes in with like stronger guarantees about how long the access will be provided for, which is like hugely beneficial. So I mean, it's been well, I would say that it's been more of a challenge, or rather the actual banks themselves have provided more of a challenge, because TrueLayer obviously have got quite a difficult job to sort of unify all these different banks under one umbrella. So I mean, the challenge isn't really like using TrueLayer's API, it's dealing with the banks at the other end. Sometimes obviously they are a bit temperamental.
Fingers crossed that will get better the longer that the banks are mandated to have this sort of to stand up secure APIs. So like hopefully a work in progress that will improve over time, especially when we get back up and running after this crisis is over. So Sean, just a little bit on the sort of like the modus operandi of TrueLayer. Like as you said there, Yodlee were providing a sort of a more dated version of this service that you guys, and also a few others. I think it's what do they call those guys over in America? I can never pronounce the name of it. They do something quite similar to you, but without the rigor.
Plaid,
that's it. We always want to say played over here in the UK, but apparently it's plaid. But so like and you guys have really come in and done some really cool stuff. How did they kind of TrueLayer come about defining what their special niche was, and what do they do differently to the guys like Yodlee?
Well, we're really API first, open banking first. Although open banking is a UK term, so in other countries we're expanding into API first, and I think that gives us certain advantages, as Matt alludes to. There's more clear expectations from the APIs. Also, we did the sort of credential sharing approach ourselves early on, while the open banking APIs were still getting up to speed, and found the open banking ones, even back then, but especially now, are much faster, much more reliable, much lower error rates, much higher conversion rates. And so I think really leading with that has put us in a really good position as those APIs have gone up to speed. And then in terms of development of this journey, I guess there's two elements. There's sort of the user journey and then the like back-end stuff in what we built. The user journey, our focus was like a combination of trust and speed. So as you can see, it's pretty quick. You just click through a couple of things. The Monzo app approves you immediately. Almost all the banks now have like an app-to-app journey like that. So you just log in with your fingerprint or Face ID and share the data. But one thing that we kind of went quickly through is there's a consent screen there. So users always have to give consent to share the data, which is really important. So we provide a screen. That's the one Plum's using. You can also, some clients build their own if they're regulated in a certain way. And so, for that, we want to be very clear what you're sharing, what data you're sharing, but also make it really easy to read, basically. And then the same sort of like trust or security is a big focus for our development as well. Like by default, we don't store any of this data. The tokens we give that give Plum access is encrypted, and you need both like the encryption key that Plum has and the encrypted token that we have. So neither of the pieces, either Plum or TrueLayer have, are enough to access the data. And so both. In that sense, we're both secure, even if we lost all of the tokens somehow. Like the data access wouldn't actually be breached. So we put a big focus on security from the very beginning, and because of that, I think it helps build trust with developers and with users.
Yeah, and I guess the big part of that will be documentation as well, and making sure that that's all neat and up to date. Any comments on sort of API documentation and that sort of thing, Matt?
Well, my experience generally, like with TrueLayer, is it's been very good. And whenever I've gone to them with questions about doing things, they said, "Oh, we think we mentioned this in the documentation," and then I check and feel embarrassed because I realised I should have read it a bit more carefully. But
that's
sorry.
But that sort of documentation stuff, that really matters to you guys, does it? Making sure that's all there in place, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it certainly makes the development experience a lot smoother. Cool. Being able to refer to that, and it's great. Cool.
And then, so Sean, just a final one to round off. Sort of like AIS services in the UK right now. Have you found sort of a lot of people using that service at the minute, and how have you found sort of managing those relationships? How did TrueLayer go about sort of negotiating all of those different clients?
Yeah, it's pretty extensive already. Actually, I know a year ago people were talking about the problems with open banking and the flaws with the APIs, but by this point, I think the access is pretty stable. The APIs, you get weird quirks occasionally from different banks, but in general, they're all pretty solid. And so we've got clients now in almost every fintech vertical you can think of. There's personal finance, there's accounting, there's loyalty programs, there's lending, credit scoring, all sorts of things. People are doing now, which is really exciting. And I mentioned it a bit earlier, but we have a very good customer success team and also a very good tech support client care team to handle both the strategic relationships and make sure we're talking to people regularly, building features they want, and also that we have a team, this client care team that can jump on any technical issues as soon as they come up. So we do that split, and we found that pretty valuable for both maintaining long-term relationships and being able to quickly diagnose and fix problems for anyone who comes up.
Cool. And you guys are obviously expanding a little bit at the minute as well. We mentioned TrueLayer in our Pulse Awards for this year, which we got and found out a little bit. You guys are really moving into places like Australia and things like that, and going to be getting involved in sort of the new sort of wave of open banking or open data services around the world. So plenty of exponential sort of growth, I guess, for you guys. The next thing we're going to look at is this the PIS journey from Plum. So this is the PIS journey, and then it's been called or labeled deposit in this instance, which was quite interesting to me. You have an instant deposit and a direct debit function which you can set up there. Nice use of like really playful language there to get into there, and then into the payments API from TrueLayer. So like this is going into a setup, really taking a load of the heavy lifting off there, like all the information's already plugged in, and then you're all done. Like that is really quick. That's awesome. And then we have some French, just in case you needed a little practice. And back into Plum, we can see the amount in that primary pocket seems to have changed. I guess this is a pretty new function for you guys. Is this something which has been released recently, or when did that come about, Matt?
Yeah, we sort of rolled it out just over a month ago, sort of the first couple of weeks of February. I think so far it's received pretty good response. Like one of the biggest complaints from our users is that sometimes deposits take a long time. And you saw direct debit there. That was our like modus operandi for moving money into Plum initially, and obviously it's kind of a slow process. People have to wait at least 2 days normally. And for manual deposits, that's like a bit of a tough sell, because people want their money to land immediately. So to be able to give them this where the money arrives at Plum like within 2 hours, and almost always it's like less than a few minutes, is really, really good. Yeah.
Interesting. So what was sort of required to facilitate these deposits via TrueLayer? Kind of by the payments API, how does this new sort of version of the well, I'm not sure how new it is, but how would this be approached from a technical perspective, getting this payments API any differently than the way that you would approach something like an AIS system?
From personal experience as a user, it's a lot simpler than the data API. Like there's no need to refresh credentials and keep track of all that, and you just fetch the authorization token, and then once you've got that, you can it's just another endpoint to actually create the payment, and once you've done that, you're done pretty much, apart from like checking the status.
As Matt said, the one big difference is the infrastructure is a bit different in that for AIS you need to keep track of the tokens and keep refreshing data, assuming you want ongoing access, which not everyone does. So it's a bit simpler for payments, but similar in the sense that each bank has their own API. There's a standard they all have to follow, but there's some nuances to every bank. They all do a little bit differently. And so in that sense, we had to go out and integrate with each one individually. And then for the user journey, it's a bit similar. You don't need to capture consent from the user. Basically, you just, they know they're making a payment, you send them to make the payment. But it's a similar process. They have to choose a bank, which Plum handles here. We also offer a screen if people don't want to build that themselves. But then you just send them to the bank and they can complete the payment themselves.
Awesome. And in terms of like the design element, I guess this sits nicely within both the AIS and PIS flows, but there is a clear sort of gateway between sort of the end bank, in this case it's Monzo, and the beginning and the sort of the starter or the start gate, which is Plum. You've got to go from Plum through to TrueLayer to Monzo, and I guess how would a product like TrueLayer typically approach sort of design when it comes to being essentially a step in between two different providers? What's the sort of thought there?
Yeah, the focus we really want to have is speed, basically, just make it as fast as possible for the user. Yeah. Especially when when you don't need TrueLayer to show anything. So in this flow, actually, the stuff we were seeing was all either on Plum or in the Monzo app. Okay. But TrueLayer is just passing users on, basically. Right. So some of the technical work was making sure that the deep links always work for the banks, so that you load them. And Plum was a fun one with Facebook Messenger for a while, when that was a focus that works differently than apps on phones. And so there's different challenges with like different mobile phones behaving different ways. So getting the app to app to work correctly was some work, because that journey is just much faster. But yeah, otherwise with sometimes if you want to use our bank selection, it's just a quick screen on TrueLayer. We want to make it really easy. for the users to just get on with what they were doing, basically.
In terms of the uptake of PIS so far, Sean in particular, how has it been adopted with other companies? Are you finding it's quite common? How are the APIs for big banks standing up for these?
It's a bit newer than the AIS. We launched payments about a year ago, I want to say. But it was still pretty early days for the banks. But by this point, the APIs are totally functional. Again, there's like occasional quirks from time to time. Matt and I were talking about some of them reject different sets of special characters. So sometimes there's a bit of things you need to work out when first setting it up. But they're all fully functional now. We've got a lot of clients that are using them to as their major form of payments, which is great. So it's exciting to see that they actually work after all the time.
Have you seen any particularly interesting use cases for the payments API at the minute?
I think Plums is a great one. The other one we announced recently is Revolut, to top up your Revolut account. And so it's been fun working with these fintechs who already have quite keen users to make it even faster for them to do their mobile banking or mobile financial products.
Okay, that's really interesting. Cool. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the desktop version of the TrueLayer Payments API. So this is a really fascinating one. It sort of kicks off with clicking on the bank. In this case, it's RBS. And then there's the ability to scan this sort of QR code thing. Got that little hand getting involved there, scanning straight into the RBS app, verifying via our Face ID there, and then selecting the account we want to generate the payment with. It's there, processing, happy days, connecting back via the TrueLayer page. And there, it's been processed. So in terms of the process itself, the journey, how did it come about, and who were you kind of really looking to target with this type of product?
Yeah, so the origin of it is that the mobile payments process is smoother than the desktop payments process, for the reason that you need to make the payment, TrueLayer, the client sends users to TrueLayer, we send them to the bank, and then you just need to log in your bank to approve a payment, basically. And so on desktop, logging in means typing in your username and password. Strong customer authentication laws mean that you might also need to do a two-factor code or something. But on mobile, since you've verified your mobile device, and most phones these days have either Face ID or fingerprint readers, all you need to do is just scan your face or scan your fingerprint, and that's enough to log in and approve the payment. So the mobile journey is much smoother. And so, for payments, it's just so important that it's quick. Like, people want to pay with things that, are easy to use. And conversion rate is a big concern for data as well, obviously, but for payments, conversion rate, that's real money you're risking losing. So looking at this data, we realized if we could make it easier for people to approve a payment on their phone, then they could pay much quicker than they would on their desktop. And so that's where the impetus for this came from, basically.
Cool. And how did you settle on the QR code as the mechanism whereby the generation happens?
It seemed like the most straightforward way to go from to activate something on mobile, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's easy now these days with the camera on your phone. You can scan a QR code and it will open the link as opposed to having to type something in. The QR code is quicker, and then given that we don't necessarily know who the user is, we want this to be easy for people who aren't logged in. We don't have a way to push them anything on their phones, so this lets any users in any company integrate more seamlessly because it's user initiated. And
sort of what sorts of companies would you expect to use this sort of product?
For us, this is anyone who is desktop based, basically. And the nice thing for us is this is actually just part of our normal payments product. So if you integrate like Plum did with the payments product, and then the user goes through a desktop journey, they see this, make it easier. And there is actually an option if they don't have their phone with them. There's an option for them to just click continue on desktop. Okay. But so we sort of bundle it together with the normal product, and then you can, on desktop, you get that journey, and on mobile, we sense if they're on a mobile phone, and we just send them, just as we saw with the Plum video, straight to the mobile device.
Cool. Nice one. I guess we'll wrap up now. But thank you both very much for coming on. Some final questions before we kick off. Big plans for 2020 so far. Obviously, things are a bit disrupted now, so you're just trying to keep business going as usual. But what are you hoping for from this year in terms of your own sort of products and that sort of thing?
I think 2019 for us was a year of establishing these products, establishing the open banking model for data and payments. And so we expect 2020 to be really big for growth. The big focus is international expansion. You mentioned earlier, Australia is talking about open banking, but Europe, the rest of Europe is finally catching up with the UK on
PSD2 coming over the hill as well. Like, that's a fertile ground for you guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so and then looking at the whole world basically, and where lots of countries around the world are talking about more API models for banks. So international expansion is big for us. And then we want to do a lot of value-added services, as we're calling them. So we provide access to data right now, but there's a lot of stuff we can do on top of that to make the data more interesting, like enrich the data even more than we already do. And then with payments as well, there's stuff we can do on top of our existing model where we can act more as a full stack payments provider and hold money for clients that need us to, or process it in different ways for different clients. Repeated payments are also a very valuable thing for subscriptions and stuff like that. So yeah, big goals for 2020, and we'll see how they go.
Nice. Same for you, Matt.
Well, one of the things we want to offer in the first half of 2020 is allowing users to connect more than one bank account, because then we can get greater insight into like their spending patterns and things. So that's sort of in the early stages, and we also have other like smaller projects that are already in the pipeline. I think mostly like dedicated to improve. Well, one for example, improving like our users' experience after they've sign up to Plum, and also things like regular spending and things to give them better insights into their own spending patterns.
Awesome. Cool. And then finally, sort of what excites you about sort of the API space right now? Anything in particular from using APIs and that sort of thing, which is exciting, Matt?
I'm actually very keen on hearing any news about variable recurring payments, because obviously, like from our perspective, that would be hugely valuable. I mean, that's probably a little way off, but when it does arrive, it could change quite dramatically, like how we interact with users' bank accounts, because we could, go on the 2-day waits for money to land in their accounts and such. So, yeah, quite excited by that.
Yeah, I think variable recurring payments is a great thing to be excited about. And just to say what that is for those who don't know, it's be sort of like storing your credit card on file somewhere. You could basically approve your bank to make payments to a trusted company, and then the fees are just way lower than cards. You just need to approve this once. You don't need to type in your card. I think that will be a really exciting model, and that's something we're working on. In general, the thing that's been exciting to me is seeing all the different ways people are using this open data stuff. Like we have all sorts of different clients doing, either things that you used to be able to do but are now simpler, like loyalty programs where you can just connect your card. You don't need to swipe something every time. Or people who are doing, new things that are very difficult to do before. Like Plum is a good example, or a lot of the financial management ones, like the ability to connect your bank, used to exist with the sort of credential sharing, but the open banking, I think, just makes it way easier and gives like richer, more consistent data to really give value to users. So I'm excited to see the new types of products that people come up with now that all this is more available and more consistent and easier to access.
Great. Cool. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. We will be doing more of these sorts of shows and trying to reach out to places around the world with different sorts of products that we might be able to speak to. So if you have any ideas about companies that you'd like us to speak to, people who you think we could use, have a good conversation with, then by all means drop us a line at pulse@11fs.com or at 11fspulse on Twitter. Pulse.11fs.com is the website again that you need to go to access our platform Pulse. It's a really great site for you to be able to see how products are being built and the designs that those products are built around. So yeah, until next time, we'll see you next week.